Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on Facebook Live, on YouTube, and on Twitter. As always, I'm Bryson Carver. We have got an absolutely packed show for you guys tonight on this Halloween. Happy Halloween to everybody out there. I know a lot of people like to get into the, like to dress up. Listen, kids do it, but at the end of the day, we're all kid at heart, right? Everybody likes to dress up. I've seen a lot of some Hocus Pocus, right? There's a new Hocus Pocus movie out. There's the Halloween movie that just came out, the last one with you got some Mike Myers costumes out. A lot of stuff. There's always the classic. One of my favorites, the Ghostbusters costume. There's a lot of great costumes out there. But I got to admit, I think I've got the best one this year. I've got the best costume this year because when it's all said and done, folks, what I'm dressed like is a winner. I'm dressed like a winner today, folks. Because my University of Tennessee Volunteers are 8-0 after a resounding win over the University of Kentucky. A lot of Kentucky fans were talking for this game, not after the first quarter or the second, dang sure not after the third. And when it was all said and done, couldn't find Kentucky fans. Couldn't find them. The Halloween-themed uniforms, if you will, the orange and black. Oh, my goodness, it was beautiful. So, I'm dressed like, folks, I'm dressed like a winner. Let's show that. Here it is. The Power T for Tennessee. All right, because my Vols, while they are tied with Ohio State for second in the AP poll, make no mistake about it, ladies and gentlemen, once the college football playoff poll comes out tomorrow, they will be number one. We, Tennessee, will be number one. Cannot wait. So that's what I'm dressed like today. I'm dressed like a winner. I'm dressed like a fan of a team who's about to be number one in the country. Normally, in most cases, that costume would involve crimson or involve scarlet or red and black. Occasionally orange and purple back in the day, about 3-4 years ago. Nah, not today. In 2022, for Halloween, it's orange and white. Make no mistake about it. But we do have a packed show for you guys tonight. Obviously, I will discuss Tennessee. I'll discuss the college football playoff rankings, which the first rankings are going to come out tomorrow at 8 Eastern on ESPN. I'm going to give you my college football rankings. I'm going to do 1 through 4. I'll also do the first two out, the two teams that are right on the doorstep of making the playoffs, but maybe would have to have some things go their way, although I do not believe that will be the case for one of them. Also, Niners absolutely putting the hammer on the Rams in the second half. Kyle Shanahan continues his dominance over Sean McVay. He's 8-1 in their last 9 matchups. I'll discuss that. What else we got? The Cowboys dominating the Bears. My man, Dakota Prescott, balling out against a top 5 pass defense in the National Football League. I'll talk about that. A little World Series talking at the end of the show. I will predict tonight's Halloween matchup. Appropriately, 2 teams that both wear orange, the Cincinnati Bengals and the Cleveland Browns. I'll predict that at the end of today's show. I kept coming off a really good. This is by far my best predicting week of the season, folks, because I'm sitting there at 12-2. Upset of the week was correct. If I were a betting man, was correct. Even Bryson's bleak bet, the one I'm not confident in at all, actually ended up being the one that looked the best for me because I had the Saints winning, and all they did was shut out the Raiders yesterday. So a lot of NFL to talk about, some baseball in there as well. But I wanted to start with last night's game between the Packers and the Bills. We all expected Buffalo to win, right? They were 11-point favorites. Funny enough, they actually did not cover, which we thought they would given the start that they got off to. But the Bills won 27-17 over the Green Bay Packers. And it was one of those where the final score didn't feel like it was indicative of how dominant Buffalo was and how inept Green Bay was. And it points to something. I'll get to the Bills a little bit, but sort of my main point is about the Packers. I will say this. I didn't hate how Aaron Rodgers played. I thought whoever does QBR was a little – I'm hard on Aaron, as hard on Aaron as anybody. I thought that whoever does the QBR rating did a really poor job of ranking his performance. They gave him a QBR in 0 to 100 of a 20. Hey, he was better than that, folks. I mean, he had a pass rating of 91. He wasn't garbage. One thing I did like about Aaron, he pushed the ball down the field occasionally, despite the fact that there's no Randall Cobb, there's no Allen Lazard, and after the first quarter, there's no Christian Watson. So a wide receiving core that already wasn't very good, we knew that coming into the season, is now even more depleted. You lost 3 of your key guys. So you rely on Sammy Watkins, who for the life of him cannot separate. You're relying on Romeo Doubs, who I thought had a really good game, made a great catch in the back corner of the end zone. He may end up being better than I thought he'd be. Okay, you're relying on kids out there essentially. So I didn't think Aaron played poorly like he did against Washington or he did against Tampa Bay in the second half or some of these games. I didn't think he played that well against the New England Patriots or the Giants in the second half. He was awful against the Jets. He was fine last night. But it points to something that I'm like, it goes to the antithesis of my biggest issue with the Packers is Matt LaFleur. He doesn't start running the football till he's down 17. And I've been beating this table constantly for the Green Bay Packers, who have one of the best running back tandems in football. You've got like the classic, it's cliche, but it's true, thunder and lightning. Thunder being A.J. Dillon, Quadzilla, as they call him in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and Aaron Jones, who's more of a shifty back. He's lightning. And so when you have all these double-digit leads like you had, say, against Tampa Bay or you had against the Giants or Washington, rely on those guys, especially because the fact, look, I get you got Aaron Rodgers, 4-time MVP, Super Bowl MVP, Hall of Famer one day. But, I mean, you see San Francisco, relying on their running game constantly. Why? It's their identity. San Francisco, who I'll discuss later, have an identity. Buffalo has an identity. I think they throw the football a little too much. Okay, they threw it too much for my liking as much as they were up late in the game with really not a whole lot of success because they couldn't put Green Bay away. But they have an identity. They know who they are. What's Green Bay? We know, surely to goodness, they know they're limited at the wide receiver position. They know that Aaron Rodgers isn't getting any younger. He's still great, I think, on most days. But, he's what is he, 38 years old, 39 years old? He's not getting any younger. You've got an excellent offensive line, and you've got one of the best running back tandems in football with Jones and Dillon. Why not rely on those guys? And they finally do last night. They run for over 200 yards as a team, but not until they're down. Down by a big deficit. And so then at that point, yeah, you're scoring. Yeah, you're kind of getting back in the game, but you're eating a lot of clock in the process. And so we'll see how incompetent Matt LaFleur is next week. They play Detroit. Green Bay should win that game. That was actually a game at Detroit that had the Packers losing coming in because they tend to never really play well at the Lions, and Detroit's not a bad team at home. They score a lot of points at home at the very least. So that'll be tough for the people to give it credit for. But when I'm looking at this Packers team, this offense in particular, guys, what are you doing? Your most valuable player, your most reliant player, I should say, is Aaron Jones. Because, not just because Aaron Rodgers is a bum or something, but because who's he got to throw to? I mean, let's look at today even more. Like him and Devontae Adams, man, they miss each other. Because Devontae was bad yesterday. Aaron's been bad by his standards this season. They should not have made that trade. But they did, so they made their bed, now they're going to have to lay in it. So you've got this tandem. You've got the offensive line. You're limited at wide receiver. Why not feed those guys? As for Buffalo, it's what I expected. Coming off a bye, they were prepared. They were really sharp, especially on third down situations. Josh Allen was typical Josh Allen, making plays with his arm, with his legs. Stephon Diggs beat the corner of the top. It was not Jerry Alexander, who, those two had a little scuffle pregame. Wouldn't call it anywhere near a fight, especially what we saw with Michigan and Michigan State over the weekend, where there's going to be like assault charges. Okay, it wasn't anything like that. But they were beefing. Jair Alexander, the great corner for the Packers, did a good job on Diggs, but Diggs got loose. So did Gabe Davis. Kevin Knox caught a touchdown. They had the running game, which I thought was good with Devin Singletary. Like, you have these guys that you can rely on in the passing game. And again, Buffalo knows what they are. Josh Allen, 13 for 25, completion percentage not great, 218, 2 touchdowns. He had a bad pick down in the red zone inside the 5-yard line that I didn't like, because obviously if Buffalo scores there, then they go up by whatever it was at that point, 17. They go back up by 17, and the Packers had no hope whatsoever of winning. And Josh Allen, by the way, to QBR of 83, but a pass rating of 75. So you look at for Buffalo, not a great second half, but all in all, a complete performance. Von Miller did a good job getting pressure, as did everybody else, especially on the interior for Buffalo's defensive line. We know that this is the best team in the AFC, along with Kansas City. It kind of feels like the quarterbacks are. It's 1A and 1B. We know that these two are in a collision course. They are going to meet at some point in the playoffs, and whoever wins that will represent the AFC in Super Bowl 57. But as for Green Bay, it goes to the problem I've always had with them, is Matt LaFleur. What are you doing? You know your receiving core is beat up. You know that, by the way, your quarterback is having some real trust issues with those receivers. Your quarterback took shots at the receivers, so their confidence can't be in the greatest place. Rely on the other two guys. And they did when they were down 17. So we'll see if they commit to the run more against the Detroit Lions team that isn't bad against the run. Certainly they're not as good as Buffalo is. And again, Buffalo's good against the run, and Packers still ran for 200. So it shows you how good the Packers can run the ball. But the question is, will they commit to it moving forward? But at the end of the day, you don't know what Green Bay's doing most days. They look Sean McDermott, who a lot of people seem to criticize Sean McDermott. I think he's a tremendous coach. I really do. You look at his game planning, you look at the lack of penalties for Buffalo, the execution. I mean, he's everything that you want in a head coach. By the way, he was successful pre-Josh Allen. Never forget, he was hired by Buffalo, got them. He helped end their long playoff drought. What was it? Was it like 16 years they hadn't been to the playoffs, and Sean McDermott takes over as a head coach, and they get in. And once you build around the identity of Sean McDermott, which is defense first, because he is a defensive coach, but then you add the superstar quarterback and those weapons. And I see Odell Beckham Jr. tweeting about, man, the Bills look good. I'm like, man, if they add OBJ, whoo, that's Gabe Davis is your third best receiver, or even maybe Odell's your third best receiver. You can make an argument today about who's the better. I'd probably take Odell healthy, but Gabe Davis is still a heck of a player. So, it's a sunny day in Buffalo, and they should take care of the Jets next week on the road before a big matchup. To me, that game should possibly get flexed to Sunday Night Football, Vikings-Bills. Let's see what the Sunday night game is that night. Ooh, gosh, it's Chargers-Niners. I'm not so sure that they shouldn't flex that Vikings-Bills game, because that's a 1:00 game between, right now, 2-6-1 teams. That is must-see TV, especially the way Minnesota's playing right now offensively. Defensively, they got some little things to correct. But good win for Buffalo, coming off the bye at home. Great energy in that stadium, as always. In Green Bay, it's about what I expect. It's about what I expect at this point. Defense gets off to a slow start, and then the coach either doesn't figure out at halftime when he has a lead, or when he has a deficit. That's when he figures it out. At that point, it's too late. So that's what I look at with the Packers right now. But, right now with what I'm seeing, though, from Aaron Rodgers, I didn't have an issue with how he played that game. I like the fact that he took shots down the field. He seemed to have a lot of trust. He didn't really have much of a choice because of the injuries, but he seemed to trust his receivers more after numerous times publicly dissing them over the course of 7 days last week. So we'll see. But, Aaron Rodgers said RELAX back in 2014. I'll say PANIC, because that's where the Packers are at right now. Especially with their schedule, by the way. You look at Green Bay's schedule moving forward, then I'll move on to the next segment. Feel free to chime in the comment section. Any especially Halloween thoughts? You guys going for anything for Halloween this year? Let me know in the comment section. Like to see that. The Packers got the Lions, and they got Dallas at home. Home against the Titans, at Philadelphia. That should be a bloodbath. At Chicago, of course, Aaron Rodgers does still own the Bears. Home against the Rams, at Miami. Home against the Vikings. Home against the Detroit Lions. So there's some tough ones. Dallas looks to be the third or fourth best team in the NFC. Philadelphia looks to be the best team in the NFC without a question. Crap, they're 7-0. I get the schedule's light, but they are. It's not like a situation where it's an undefeated team who's playing down to their competition. We've seen teams do that. Heck, we saw the Steelers do that 2 years ago. Steelers started 11-0. Didn't get out of the first round of the playoffs. Okay, because they were a fraud. They took advantage of a weak schedule. We're barely beating these teams on this week's schedule, and then once they started to face a little bit of competition, they folded, especially with some of the injuries that they suffered. I do not see Philadelphia in that same light whatsoever. But yeah, Green Bay's schedule, to say the very least, is pretty brutal moving forward. Moving on to what was America's game of the week, Rams 49ers, second game that the Niners have been on that big Fox game. I picked the Rams to win this game for the simple fact that they were coming off a bye, for the sort of pride factor that there is, the fact that, losing to the Niners 7 straight times in the regular season. You're at home. It's basically going to be a road game because those Niners fans take over SoFi Stadium. mean, it's like I was hearing somebody say earlier this morning that it feels like the Niners have more fans in Los Angeles than the Rams do. And I don't know. I've seen 3 games in the calendar year 2022 in SoFi Stadium that featured the San Francisco 49ers and the Los Angeles Rams. All 3, it has been overwhelmingly scarlet and gold, okay? It has not been a whole lot of blue and gold, or blue and yellow, really, for the Rams. But the Rams won this game. By the way, I thought, Deebo Samuel, I thought would hurt the 49ers a little bit. But the Niners won this game pretty convincingly, especially in the second half, 31-14. I got to give Jimmy Garoppolo his props. I've been very critical of Jimmy Garoppolo for a long time in the show. I won't do it today because he played well yesterday, but I constantly pull up his stat line in the postseason, which is less than impressive, to say the very least. He has not led them to the Super Bowl or the NFC Championship game. He has simply been a beneficiary of what's been around him in terms of the game plan, in terms of personnel, certainly in terms of the defense that he's got backing him up, and even the special teams in one case against the Packers. But Jimmy Garoppolo played well yesterday, right? He had 235 yards, 2 touchdowns, QBR of 81, and a great pass rating, 132. Ironically enough, it was actually the second best pass rating of his own team because Christian McCaffrey threw a touchdown pass, and he had a perfect passer rating of 158.3. But it's funny. I said that Christian McCaffrey, what the Niners did is they added a second Deebo Samuel because their skill sets are so similar. That they are 2 of how many players in the NFL could do this? Can have 1,000 yards rushing, 1,000 yards receiving. Deebo can do it. Christian McCaffrey has already done it. I mean, I'm trying to think of somebody else that can. A name is not registering to my brain at this particular moment in time. But it's ironic that I said that last week. And Christian McCaffrey, I always talk about Deebo Samuel. He's the best overall offensive player in the NFL because he can run for touchdowns. He can catch touchdowns. I mentioned that he threw a touchdown pass to Juwan Jennings, against the Rams last year. Ironically enough, Christian McCaffrey can run touchdowns. He can catch touchdowns, which he did both yesterday. And he threw a 34-yard strike to Brandon Ayuk for a touchdown. And this is why I said that the trade was absolutely, overwhelmingly going to be in favor of the 49ers. And it goes back to what I've always said in sports. If you feel you're on the cusp, go for it. Don't be the Green Bay Packers, kind of, set in their ways. We got one way to win. We do it through the draft. It's homegrown, and we're going to, Aaron Rodgers and this, that. No, you need to bring some outside sources in. Need to bring some people in to try and help you win. That's what the Ravens just did today with Roquan Smith. Okay, it's what, a lot of these teams have done. That's why the Niners brought in McCaffrey. Yeah, they've got that Wilson kid who, by the way, seems to be pretty good. Yeah, they got Elijah Mitchell. Yes, they can run the ball with Deebo Samuel when he's healthy. But why not upgrade? Because like I said, are the 49ers a better team with Christian McCaffrey than without him? Well, of course they are. Christian McCaffrey is an all-pro running back. Go for it. Be the Los Angeles Rams last year, going out and getting Von Miller and OBJ. And before that, trading for Matthew Stafford, who was an upgrade over Jared Goff. Be the Buffalo Bills, going after Von Miller. And possibly also going out and getting OBJ. That is the way to win in the NFL. Not being the Packers the last couple of years. Well, we're winning 13 games. Don't want to mess with a good thing going on, right? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Yeah, where'd that get you? Knocked out in the playoffs twice at home, including in one instance where you gave up 13 points and still lost because your offense couldn't do anything. Because once the Niners took away Devontae Adams and they took away Aaron Jones, well, Aaron Rodgers, we know his trust issues, not just with his receivers, but people off the field. He's not going to anybody else. So with the 49ers, what they're doing here, love it. This is what I've always talked about in sports. This is why I love John Lynch as a general manager. We see the meme all the time, F them picks. People are too married oftentimes to picks because, again, the Niners gave up, was it 2 seconds and 2/4? What are the chances that collectively that those picks are going to pan out to be as effective for San Francisco than Christian McCaffrey? We don't know that. We know that Christian McCaffrey is fantastic. We know that 3 years ago, just 3 years ago, And he's had 2 injury-riddled years since, so the last time he was fully healthy. 1,000 yards rushing, 1,000-yard receiving. I believe he's one of only 3 players in NFL history to do that. And he's available. Oh, wait, by the way, the team that we could meet in the Super Bowl if we get there, they want him, the Kansas City Chiefs. Oh, wait, the team that's in our own division who just won the Super Bowl last year, they want him? You think the Rams don't regret not getting Christian McCaffrey today? This is what I love about the Niners and the way they do business. This is what I love about the Rams last year and the Bills. Go for it. You know, Steve Harvey, love Steve Harvey, talks all the time about, you know, when you're uncertain of something, but you got a big dream. He says, jump. Just jump. This is what the 49ers have done. They jumped. They went out and got Christian McCaffrey to go, because if there is no Deebo Samuel, okay, don't change your game plan whatsoever. Long as number 23 is in the lineup for you. Because you can use him in the same way that you could use Deebo Samuel, along with Brandon Ayuk, and along with George Kittle, who caught the touchdown at the end of the game that put the game out of reach for Los Angeles. Not to mention that you have one of, if not the best defensive line in the National Football League, who gave Matt Stafford a long, long day back there in the pocket. So this is, I love the fact that the Niners made this trade, and I kind of love the fact that their second game with Christian McCaffrey, that they not only beat the Rams, but beat them badly. No, it's nothing against the Rams. I picked the Rams. I wanted the Rams to win. But the fact that they sort of made a statement to the NFL that, man, if you're close, and there's a lot of teams in the NFL that are that close, man, go for it. If you're the Philadelphia Eagles, go get Robert Quinn. That draft pick, the chances of that draft pick panning out as opposed to what Robert Quinn can give you right now, it's astronomical. Go get A.J. Brown in free agency. If you have a good scouting department, great. The Niners do. The Eagles do. The Bills do. This is why so often teams like Green Bay are not able to get over the top, despite having an elite quarterback, despite having elite players at certain positions, such as in the past Devontae Adams, or like now Jair Alexander or David Bakhtiari. Because they're not able to fill in those little skill positions. Or if there's a big-time player and all a team wants is draft picks. All they want is draft picks. Especially if you're sure of what you have at the quarterback position. San Francisco doesn't even know if Jimmy G is going to be there next year. They don't know. Like, we don't care. We want to win the Super Bowl this year. No time like the present, after all. I love it. And listen, there's value in playing the long game if you're a bad team. If you're Carolina, yeah, you should be getting picks if you're Carolina. If you are the Chicago Bears, I just saw that with the number of picks the Bears have next year. The Bears have like 8, 9, 10 draft picks next year in the draft. Good for them. That's how the Bears are going to try and rebuild this thing. Bears aren't close to winning a Super Bowl. Niners are. This is why I said San Francisco won the trade. And so Christian McCaffrey, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think he's the only player in NFL history since the merger. Or no, it might have been since 2009. It's been a while since a player has caught a touchdown, ran for a touchdown, and thrown a touchdown in the same game. Like, it's been a while since that happened, and Christian McCaffrey did that because he is one of the best players in the NFL on the offensive side of the football. But again, I kind of got a kick out of seeing San Francisco do that, just to sort of make an example of the Rams and of the entire NFL. That if you're close, Steve Harvey said, jump. It's that simple. But before I get to the Cowboys game, which was fascinating, and some of the things surrounding the Cowboys game that were fascinating, do want to go through some of the other games in the NFL. I'd like to do this when I have the time. Broncos-Jaguars, the early morning game. It is a good thing Denver won this game for 2 reasons. Number one, it's good for, I don't know if it's good for the Broncos that they won this game for the sake of not firing Nathaniel Hackett, which I thought they should have done last week anyway. But Nathaniel Hackett is the Broncos coach for at least another week. For what it's worth, Russell Wilson, I thought, played excellent in the second half. He was tremendous. Used his legs, had that beautiful deep ball to KJ Hamler, was accurate, seemed to have more poise in the pocket than I've seen from him in a while. But of course, the Jaguars keep getting me, folks. The Jaguars keep getting me. I took the Jaguars to win again, and Trevor Lawrence got me. Interception in the game. Just as like he's had numerous occasions. It's I don't know if it's a number one pick syndrome. I don't know what it is. But Trevor Lawrence, Matt Stafford, they can't help themselves. They have to throw picks. It's like they signed some of their deal. They got to throw at least one pick a game or at least one crushing interception. One, what are you doing interception per game? But for Jacksonville, this is what I predicted for them going into the season. They're a 6-win team, and the majority of their losses, if not to this point, all of their losses, come down to the last second. And that's exactly what's been the case. Denver was better situationally late than Jacksonville, which I did not anticipate. This is arguably the Broncos' best offensive performance to this point in the season. I mean, for what it's worth, Russell did have a passer rating of 84, did throw for 252. Completion percentage wasn't awful. Credit where credit's due. Russ played well. Do I expect that to continue given Denver's schedule? Absolutely not. At Tennessee, they should beat the Raiders. They should beat the Panthers. Then they got at Baltimore, Kansas City, Arizona, Rams, Chiefs, Chargers. This team's going to have a hard time getting to 7 or 8 wins. A hard time, given the coaching situation, given the limitations at quarterback. I still believe it's going to be a long season for Denver, but good win for the Broncos. Falcons-Panthers, what a game that was. Back and forth. Marcus Mariota's playing out of his mind right now. Arthur Smith, which I love the Arthur Smith hiring from the beginning when he was hired by the Falcons before the 2021 season. I think he's a tremendous offensive mind. And he goes to Atlanta, and with Marcus Mariota, with some of those offensive pieces, Drake London, who you guys know I'm a huge fan of, Kyle Pitts and company, scored 37 points against Carolina. Obviously, everybody's talking about the end of the game where P.J. Walker, a guy who was in the XFL like 3 years ago, makes the third-string quarterback coming in behind Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold. He's the third string to those guys. And makes the throw of his life with 15 seconds left to DJ Moore, who I've been campaigning for the Cowboys to trade for. And DJ Moore makes a great catch, beats the defense, scores a touchdown. The game is tied before the extra point, and he does the ultimate, oh, what are you doing? He takes his helmet off, which we all know is automatic 15 yards, unsportsmanlike conduct, which Arthur Smith, credit to him, credit to Arthur Smith, okay, because he could have taken that 15-yard penalty on the kickoff, and then Atlanta would have been down 1. Of course, with Eddie Pinheiro kicking, it might have still been tied. Who knows? Because he was missing field goals all over the place yesterday, including in overtime. But Atlanta could have gotten the ball, maybe gotten into field goal range, and maybe tried a 60-yarder to win it. Nope. He took the penalty on the extra point, made it a 48-yard extra point, which Eddie Pinheiro, of course, missed. A lot of people are kind of deciding, hey, who do we blame? Because, it's Twitter, so we got to blame somebody. Who's the blame go on? Well, I'll make it easy for you. I'll do something that Twitter does not do, that social media does not do, is that it's both people's fault. You can have two thoughts at once. DJ Moore made a boneheaded mistake taking his helmet off in the field of play after the touchdown. I don't necessarily agree with the call, or not the call, but the fact that is a penalty. I don't love it. Listen, as long as you're not like hurting anybody, I don't care what celebration you do. I honestly, I could care less what celebration you do. But that is the rule. And DJ Moore needed to be aware of that at that point in time. Emotions got the best of him, took his helmet off 15 yards, and the game ended up going to overtime, which, of course, Atlanta ended up winning on a walk-off kick by Young Hoku. But Atlanta today, how about this? We're halfway through the 2022 NFL season. And in a division that has the well-run Saints and that has the greatest quarterback of all time, it is the Atlanta Falcons, led by Marcus Mariota, who are first place in their division. That's why we love the NFL. Seattle, the Seattle story of the Giants and the Jets, although I'll get to the Jets in just a second. They looked awful yesterday, but especially offensively, especially the quarterback. But that's why we love the NFL. What Atlanta did yesterday, unbelievable. Miami beat Detroit 31-27. I know a lot of you Tua fans, Tuing on, as it's been dubbed, and as I've delightfully called it that, although they're not as damaging as the thing that it's named after. But the point is, a lot of Tua fans out there have been, man, Bryce, you were wrong about Tua, or 4-0 with Tua. He's got all the touchdowns, leading league in pass rating. Okay, that's cute. Okay. First one came against the New England Patriots. It's with Mac Jones. Is that very impressive? Second win on the road against the Baltimore Ravens defense that was the worst secondary in football at that point in time. Win against the Buffalo Bills, which was impressive, but Tua didn't play that well. Although I'll give him the concussion excuse because he should not have even finished that game. Pittsburgh, 4 interceptions dropped. If Pittsburgh corrals 2 of those, Miami loses that game last week. And then against Detroit, the worst pass defense in professional football, in a dome. You were playing from behind against Jared Goff. Yeah, I'd hope when you have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and company and Mike Gesicki, I'd sure hope you win that game. I'm still seeing the fact, I was talking about Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts' arm, I don't know what's happened over an offseason. It's gotten better. Like, that was one of my criticisms of Hurts. Like, man, he could push the ball down the field now. Tua? Nope. Let's see who's the Dolphins' December schedule. Okay, in December, at San Francisco, weather won't be a factor there. At Chargers, same situation. At Buffalo, it gets cold in Buffalo. Okay, home against the Packers, they'll have the advantage there. At Foxborough, they'll probably beat the Patriots, but it is cold in Foxborough in the winter. And should Miami make the playoffs, they're not beating the Buffalo for the division, so they're going to be playing on the road against Cincinnati. We know Cincinnati gets cold in the winter. Looking at the playoff standings right now, Tennessee. Trust me, I live in Tennessee, not in Nashville, but I live in this beautiful state. We don't get enough credit for how cold it gets in the winter, man. It gets cold. Like, really, it's not like Minnesota or Wisconsin cold, but it gets cold up here. Baltimore, cold in Baltimore. When you have a quarterback who arm strength is not only not a strength of his, but a weakness, well, that's going to be an issue moving forward. So, no, I have not been proven wrong on Tua. Stop it. Or Mike McDaniel, for that matter. Moving on, let's see. Vikings-Cardinals. That was the game that I went back and forth on. Thank God. I'm like thinking about lucky stars. I picked the Vikings to win. DeAndre Hopkins and Kyler Murray were once again sensational. DeAndre had 159 yards receiving, had that phenomenal catch in the end zone, one-handed with his left hand at the end of the first half. But Kyler and Cliff Kingsbury once again into the game. Terrible situationally, unaware of the clock. Just seemed disorganized, discombobulated. Good chance Cliff Kingsbury, despite the extension, is probably going to lose his job at season's end. Obviously, you're not going to let go of Kyler Murray because A, you can't, because he's got a big contract. B, I mean, who you going to upgrade? I mean, this is not you're probably not going to replace Kyler Murray in 1 year. But Minnesota looked great. I picked Minnesota to win because they were coming off a bye. Kirk Cousins played well. They were really good in the red zone. They were efficient. Didn't turn the ball over. I mean, that's what I expected from Minnesota this year. I said coming into this season, they lost a lot of close games last year. This year, with an upgraded head coach and Kevin O'Connell, who I predicted would be the coach of the year this year, Minnesota would not only be a playoff team, but they would win the NFC North and win a playoff game. And that's what it's looking like thus far through the first part of the season. Let's see, Raiders-Saints, that was my Bryson's bleak bet game, and it was anything but bleak. It's a good thing I picked the Saints because the Saints shut out the Vegas Raiders 24-0. Listen, man, Derek Carr is my guy. I love Derek Carr. Like, seriously, Derek Carr is one of my favorite players in the NFL. It's been him. It's been Derek Carr, Dak Prescott, and Lamar Jackson, the 3, to me, most over-criticized quarterbacks in the NFL. Love Derek Carr. There is nothing that I can say whatsoever that can possibly defend whatever that was yesterday. Literally 101 yards passing, barely broke 100 and broke it in garbage time. An interception, QBR of 14, passer rating of 50, should have been worse. And then Devontae Adams. 1 catch for 3 yards. Many people consider you the best receiver in football. And Marshawn Lattimore, who is arguably the best corner in football. I love Marshawn Lattimore. But great offense beats great defense any day of the week. And you get held by Marshawn Lattimore to a catch for 3 more yards than I had. Come on, bro. Listen, Derek Carr is obviously not Aaron Rodgers. That doesn't take a genius to point that out. But that's unacceptable. The Saints have not been playing well defensively. Like, I thought it'd be more of a shootout type game where the Raiders made one mistake, weren't good situationally. But one last name to bring up. Josh McDaniels. A lot of people love Josh McDaniels in New England. So, he's this great play caller with Tom Brady. Was he? Oh, did he just have Tom Brady at quarterback? Adam Gase had Peyton Manning at quarterback. Nathaniel Hackett had Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. It's not to say you can't be a great coach having a great quarterback. There's been plenty of guys. Plenty of guys have been. I mean, Andy Reid had Brett Favre. Andy Reid's one of the best coaches of all time, in my view. My opinion, if you ask me, rank the coaches top to bottom, I'm probably putting Andy Reid at my top spot. I'm putting him over Belichick, putting him over everybody. Okay, I think Andy Reid's a tremendous coach. It doesn't mean if you have an elite quarterback, you can't be a great coach. But we got to be really careful about if we have a little bit of suspicion, like, I don't know, I'm not seeing it right now through him as a coordinator, as a play caller, or whatever his role is with his previous destination. Well, I mean, listen, he worked with a future Hall of Fame quarterback. Maybe he can turn our quarterback into that. No, he can't. Josh McDaniels was a disaster in Denver, and he's been a disaster thus far with a very talented Raiders roster. A Raiders roster, which, by the way, wasn't this good last year because they added Chandler Jones and Devontae Adams, although Devontae gave you nothing. But this Raiders roster essentially made the playoffs last year with Rich Bisaccia, who had never coached a game in his life before last year. I said on the show at the time, I said they need to make Bisaccia their full-time head coach. The players loved him. They bought into him. They were disciplined, which Raiders teams are never disciplined because they tend to hire bad coaches, which they apparently have done once again. That Josh McDaniels in over his head, just like I predicted. I thought the Raiders would make the playoffs because I trusted Carr and Adams and a slight improvement defensively. No, this is easy. This team's worse than Denver. At least Denver has an elite defense. At least they got that. At least they have some playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. Vegas is a disaster. Everybody deserves blame. My man Derek Carr, Devontae Adams, and to me, most of all, Josh McDaniels. So it's embarrassing what they put on that field in the Superdome yesterday. Patriots-Jets. I got reactions to both. Or actually, let me just tie it up in one nice little cute bow. Both quarterbacks are draft busts. They are. Mac Jones a draft bust. I was right on him. Zach Wilson was a draft bust. I was right on him too. They are both exactly what I thought that they would be when they were drafted. Starting with the losing quarterback, Zach Wilson, who the Jets have won in spite of. They've won running the football and with defense and with great situational play under Coach Robert Saleh. I think Robert Saleh is an excellent head coach. I really do. I've always been a Robert Saleh fan. But if you look at how the Jets have called these games, it's ironically, it's very similar to where Robert Saleh used to coach the 49ers. They try to sort of mask Jimmy G into all the pieces they have, into the game plan that they have. That's what the Jets have done. And yesterday, they could not mask Zach Wilson anymore. He's mistake prone. He's got a low football IQ. Yes, his arm is fantastic. But that you got to give me more. You got to give me accuracy. You got to give me good decision making. You got to give me poise and good movement in the pocket. You can't give me a QBR of 24 with 3 picks. Okay, but Zach Wilson's everything I thought he'd be. I knew just partly because of where he went in New York with the Jets, because as I always say, the New York Jets are where young quarterbacks' dreams go to die. Got a long list of names I can show you to prove that. But this is exactly what I thought Zach Wilson would be, in part because it's who he was in college. He's essentially a less talented Jameis Winston. Big arm, mistake prone, not the greatest football IQ, doesn't move that well in the pocket. Now, Zach Wilson's a better athlete than Jameis is, but it's kind of the same guy. And then as for Mac Jones. As the great John Madden once said, the late great John Madden, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks. We are going to be discussing Zappy versus Jones for the rest of the season. Now, the difference is Bailey Zappe is a 4th-round draft pick out of, was it Eastern Kentucky, Western Kentucky, somewhere in Kentucky. Mac Jones was the 15th overall pick back in 2021 out of the University of Alabama. He was awful yesterday. Terrible in the red zone. Every single time it looked like the Patriots were going to pull away, he'd make a mistake. Every time. Missed throws. He had a pick. Again, settling for too many field goals. Again, that'll work against the Jets, especially when you're playing from ahead and the Jets have to rely on Zach Wilson to carry them. But long term, this is why I don't think the Patriots are a playoff team, folks. Look, I get the offensive line's bad. I get that the receiving core is bad. Hey, didn't affect Bailey Zappe that much. Mac Jones is a draft bust. When are we going to admit this? That if the situation is not absolutely perfect like it was last year. You get the running game, the defense gets you turnovers, you're working off play action, you got 3rd down and 2. No, how about offensive line? We got some injuries to our left tackle and our right guard. Number 1 receivers down. Running game isn't really working today. Go win us the game, Mac Jones. He can't do that. It's a good thing they were playing the Jets yesterday because it didn't cost you a win. But Mac Jones and Zach Wilson are both draft busts. It's conclusive. It's obvious. Both teams win in spite of their quarterbacks. It's ridiculous. Which it's a little concerning because to this point, which is their 2nd year, we're not going to panic. But none of the 2021 quarterbacks have played out yet. Trevor Lawrence is immensely talented, but God, he turns the ball over too much. Zach Wilson turns the ball over too much, but unlike Trevor Lawrence, doesn't really give you a whole lot of wow plays. Doesn't really move the ball down the field with his arm. Gets a lot of help from his running game. Okay, Trey Lance has barely played, and when he has played, and I was huge on Trey Lance coming out of the draft, you guys know that. He hasn't looked that great despite some of the weapons that San Francisco has. Justin Fields, I mean, you saw it yesterday, about to talk about Bears Cowboys, had his moments, but misses too many throws. He turns the ball over, too many fumble. Not great pocket awareness, which in defense of him, his offensive line's terrible. But Justin Fields hasn't panned out into what we thought he'd be. And Mac Jones, I called that out of left field. He's limited. He's very limited. He's a backup quarterback. If he's not, if he does have a great pocket, if he does have the running game to support him, he doesn't have a good arm. His accuracy has plummeted, almost like Baker Mayfield. Remember Baker came in the NFL, and that was what everybody talked about. Oh, my God, this kid's so accurate. And we saw it his rookie year, and then ever since, it's like just left him. I can't really explain it, but it has. Same with Mac Jones. He's a draft bust. Eagles took care of the Steelers in convincing fashion, which we all pretty much thought they would. Jalen Hurts was outstanding. A.J. Brown had 3 touchdown catches. The defense was outstanding, albeit against a Pittsburgh Steelers offense that, frankly, isn't very good. But, again, you look at Philadelphia's schedule, they're not going to go undefeated. I think Dallas will beat them on Christmas Eve. I think, who does Philadelphia play? They play somebody else late in the season. That's tough. Tennessee is not a gimme. Let's see. The Giants, not a gimme either. They play the Giants twice. The Saints are no pushover. So I got the Eagles finishing 14-3. They'll finish 14th, and they'll probably lose a game late in the season just because they're resting their starters. They've already clinched the 1 seed. They clinched the NFC East, which, by the way, may I re-nickname the NFC Beast, because it is a beast. It is by far the best teams in the NFL, or in the NFC. I think it's the best division record combined between Philadelphia, Dallas, New York, and Washington. Best combined division record since the 1970 merger. It's pretty good. But Philadelphia looked outstanding. I don't need to really break that down a whole lot. They were fantastic. Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown have a great connection. Titans, Derrick Henry. I predicted it on the show. Did I predict it on the show on Friday? Which was, by the way, if I were a betting man, which the Texans scared me a little bit. I thought I was going to get it wrong. But Derrick Henry, I said Derrick Henry would run for 200 yards against the Houston Texans. Derrick Henry, 32 carries, which is unbelievable. 32 carries for 219 yards, 2 touchdowns. I'm telling y'all, this man owns the Houston Texans. Every time he plays Houston, in Houston, dude goes off. Didn't have to make, Malik Willis didn't play particularly well. It was his first NFL start. But yeah, listen, he didn't have to. When you've got King Henry back there, don't have to worry about whoever your quarterback is. If I'm your quarterback, okay, Derrick Henry's going to run you to victory. Washington, the Colts, a very exciting finish at the end. I mean, for a game that featured Taylor Heineke and Sam Ehlinger as the 2 quarterbacks, very exciting game. Came down the wire. That was my upset of the week. I had Washington winning. Terry McLaurin, the most underrated receiver in the NFL, mossed a guy at the 1-yard line. Taylor Heineke ran in for the winning score with 22 seconds left, and the Commanders are 500 on a 3-game winning streak. Washington Commanders have a pulse. Something else I predicted. I said Derrick Henry would run for 200 against the Texans. That's exactly what happened. I predicted when Carson Wentz went down, Taylor Heineke will not give the starting job back. You sure Washington's going to go back to Carson Wentz now? I mean, Taylor Heineke isn't lighting the world on fire. I mean, he's not. But this is a situation with Rush and Dak where, okay, Cooper Rush is playing pretty well, but there is a sizable gap between him and Dak Prescott. Wentz is probably better than Heinicke, but given Wentz's bad decision-making, happy feet in the pocket, the fact that his teammates don't seem to like him all that much, which was the case in Philly and in Indianapolis, I don't know. Washington's won 3 straight games. Heinicke's teammates rave about him. They love him a lot more than they love Wentz. I think Taylor Heinicke's not giving up that job anytime soon. And the Seahawks beating the Giants last game before I talk about Dallas and Chicago. The Geno Smith story continues. He had a couple touchdown passes to Tyler Lockett, or one went to Tyler Lockett. DK Metcalf doing DK Metcalf things. The running game, Kenneth Walker was excellent yesterday. And this is why I picked Seattle to win. I felt like they had the advantage at quarterback with Geno Smith. As good as the Giants' defense is, when you have the weapons that Seattle has, when you're able to run the ball like Seattle's been able to run it, and when you have the defense that Seattle has had over the last few weeks, Pete Carroll, defensive coach, has gotten that side of the ball right. Eventually, the Giants are going to have to ask Daniel Jones to win a game for him, and I do not think he is capable of doing just that. So a good win for Seattle. They still sit atop the NFC West, even above San Francisco, who many consider the second best or the best team in the NFC. It is the Seattle Seahawks, who are a game above them. Again, why we love the NFL. Why we love the NFL. Dallas, Chicago. Let's talk about that for a little bit. First of all, there's sort of a controversy surrounding the Tony Pollard, Ezekiel Elliott thing. For those of you who don't know, Ezekiel Elliott did not play yesterday. He dealt with a knee injury. He had a pretty brutal hit against the Detroit Lions. He finished that game, but didn't practice all week and was not able to go yesterday against the Bears. But lucky for the Cowboys, their backup running back would start on probably 20 teams in the NFL, that being Tony Pollard, because he had 14 carries for $131, 3 touchdowns, and averaged 9 yards a carry. And I heard on the radio this morning that Tony Pollard, he is the first running back to have less than 15 carries and run for over 100 yards and 3 touchdowns since like the early 90s. So it's pretty historic what Pollard did yesterday. Like when he got the ball, he took advantage. We know he's obviously more explosive than Zeke. I've been on this for a few years now. I think Zeke has a role in Dallas. I'm not of the mindset that I'll just move on from Zeke. I've never been of that mindset. Zeke still has a role in Dallas. He's great for third and short situations. But when we hear teams talk about all the time, we want to establish the running game. And Dallas has been as vocal about that as anybody. We want to establish the run. We want to establish the run. We're a running football team. We've heard that ever since Dak and Zeke's rookie year. Well, Zeke can't establish the run anymore. He is not the type of back where on first down he can get you 5-6 yards. He can get you 3 and a good carry 4, but he is not an explosive back. He is a short yardage back. He is on 2nd and 5. Give it to Zeke. Make it 3rd and 2, 3rd and 1, and give it to him again if it's 3rd and 1. If it's 4th and 1, give it to Zeke. I'll trust Zeke up the middle, especially than Tony Pollard. But in terms of explosiveness, quickness, the sort of acceleration that this guy has, Tony Pollard's a better running back today than Zeke. I mean, I've been saying this is 2020. I think people have come around to it. I'm sorry. I know Jerry Jones said after the game, way go as Zeke goes. Okay, you're not going to go too far if that's your mantra. Because offensively, you go as Dak goes. And then as Tony Pollard goes. And then whoever your receivers are on that given day, whether it be Gallup or Lamb or Noah Brown, who didn't play yesterday. You do not go as Ezekiel Elliott goes. You did in 2016, although Dak was outstanding his rookie year, but it was kind of a tandem. You don't go as Zeke goes anymore. You go as Tony Pollard goes. And the second thing, I sort of briefly mentioned him. I say it over and over, and I'm going to say it again. Y'all say it with me, folks. You know his name. Rain Dakota Prescott. Whew! Man, you see that guy yesterday? He was throwing it all over the field. 250, 2 touchdowns, ran for a touchdown, had the best QBR in the National Football League yesterday at a 93.8. Passer rating of 114.5. Oh my goodness. He was dealing, wheeling and dealing to Gallup. He had a beautiful touchdown throw to CeeDee Lamb. I mean, he was magnificent. By the way, reason I'm all going on and on about Dak Prescott, he's like, Bryce, it's the Chicago Bears. This isn't like the Bills or something. Yeah, it's not the Bills. I don't know. Is the second best pass defense in football, does that sound pretty good to you? Because that's what the Bears were coming into this game. And Dak Prescott, with no true number one receiver, because CeeDee Lamb is not. I said that before the season. I think he's proven to be just that, a number two receiver, not a one. Go get OBJ, Jerry. But against the number two pass defense in the NFL with no true number one receiver, albeit they get help from the run game, I'll acknowledge that. But Dak Prescott had the best QBR in the NFL and was just outstanding. Again, there was the interception, obviously. Eddie Jackson, who is a ball hawk, if there ever was one, out of where? The University of Alabama. That's what they do. They produce ball hawking corners there. But that was a situation where Dak looks off the linebacker, has CeeDee Lamb, and CeeDee just keeps running. CeeDee out of his peripheral, out of his left eye, sees Eddie Jackson coming to make a play on the ball. And CeeDee Lamb, just like in Philadelphia, he didn't help Cooper Rush. Remember, Cooper Rush got hit, just got crushed back there, threw a deep ball down the left sideline. It was catchable, but CeeDee Lamb's like, I don't want that contact. No, I don't want that. And as a result, gets intercepted. Same case yesterday. CeeDee Lamb don't want that smoke. Eddie Jackson does. Eddie Jackson got the football. CeeDee Lamb did not. But again, aside from the one mistake, Dak was just absolutely outstanding yesterday. He's phenomenal. The running game was excellent. Ran for 200 even. Tony Pollard, I mentioned his stat line. Micah Parsons doing what Micah Parsons always does. He is showing once again why I think he's going to be the defensive player of the year in the NFL. He had the scoop and score in which Justin Fields inexplicably did not touch him when Micah Parsons' knee was down. So Micah had the presence of mind, picked that football up, run to the house, which pretty much put the game out of reach at that point. But Chicago kind of did offensively what I thought they'd do. Run it right down Dallas's throat. This is now 3 straight games where the Bears have had 200 yards rushing. Justin Fields was running the football. David Montgomery was running it. Herbert was running a little bit. This is the way to beat Dallas, though. Get a lead on them, eat the clock, keep the ball out of the hands of Dak Prescott, and run it down Dallas's throat. That, to me, that is what's going to be the death of the Cowboys. That, along with lack of situational awareness and penalties, that's what's going to get Dallas beat in the postseason. That's what I think separates Philadelphia, Minnesota, and San Francisco from Dallas. Dallas, to me, is the best tier 2 team in the NFC. Today, I'm sorry, Cowboys fans. I mean, listen, Dak's my guy. Should have wore my Dak hat today. But they are not a contender today. They're not. How am I supposed to call you a contender when teams consistently, over and over, run the football right down your throat? I mean, it's a good thing you had Dak Prescott at quarterback yesterday and not Cooper Rush, because you're not getting 49 points. Well, really 42 points because Micah Parsons had the touchdown. But still, you're not getting 42 points with Cooper Rush. You are with Dak. Dak set the tone early. The 3 touchdowns on the first 3 drives. He was excellent. 3 touchdowns in the first 4 drives. 3 out of the first 4 drives, Dak Prescott either scored a touchdown or threw for a touchdown. That is the Dak Prescott that I have known and loved. It is the Dak Prescott that I have consistently defended and consistently dubbed clearly and obviously a top 10 quarterback. As I always say, if his stats are in the top 10, if his wins are in the top 10, he's probably a top 10 quarterback. I don't know. When we talk about the most successful guys, we talk about stats and wins. Dak's top 10 in both. Therefore, he is a top 10 quarterback. Let's not overthink this, folks. But Dallas's bye is coming at a good time because that secondary is beat up. Malik Hooker out. Jordan Lewis down for the year. This is rough. So for the Cowboys, this is a good win. I figured that they would cover that 10-point spread over Chicago, but at the end of the day, this is still not yet a Super Bowl contender, but make no mistake about it, they made strides in the right direction. Now, tomorrow night at 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific on ESPN, ESPN is going to come out with their college football playoff, or ESPN, it's not theirs, they're just airing it. The College Football Committee is going to come out with their first rankings of the year. So we saw like the AP rankings came out yesterday. Tomorrow, the AP will be rendered irrelevant, thankfully, because AP to me doesn't get it right a whole lot. But AP is going to be rendered irrelevant for the rest of the college football season. The playoff ranking is what's going to matter. So there's been a lot of debate. Who's the 4 playoff teams? Is there a possibility, hey, in a Power 5 college football, are we going to get 3 teams from the SEC? That being Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama? It's in the cards. Is there a possibility that a team could get in without winning their division? Sure. It could be Tennessee. It could be Georgia. It could be Ohio State. It could be Michigan. Absolutely. Is an undefeated Clemson team going to get pushed out? Yeah, possibly. So, looking at the college football rankings right now, you see where they're at. I'm just going to go put up right here. So if I had to do a college football rankings, this is what it would look like. So first of all, who would be the first teams out? To me, it's Alabama and Oregon, okay? Alabama at number 5, who still, listen, they control their own destiny. They have, to me, either the best or second best quarterback in college football, a guy who I think could be the number 1 pick in the draft, that being Bryce Young. The fact that what he is doing with an Alabama offensive line that by Alabama standards is as good as we expect. The fact that, again, considering the receiving talent that he hasn't lived up to par. When has Alabama lined up without a first-round receiver? It's been a while. Even last year, they had Jamison Williams. Okay, they had John Mechie. Get well soon, John Mechie. We're praying for you. Wish you the best. But this is kind of unlike Alabama. Will Anderson is kind of their only major playmaker defensively. But because of their elite quarterback play, because of the fact that they have Will Anderson defensively, really the shocker for me for Alabama has been the penalties. I mean, they're having double-digit penalties every game, which is shocking for a Nick Saban coach team. And I've got Oregon, not Clemson, not TCU. I've got Oregon 6th. People need to move past week 1 against Georgia, where they got walloped 49-3. They got to move past it. Why? Because what the College Football Playoff Committee always looks at, they look at strength of schedule, but they also look at how do you play down the stretch late. How do you play down the stretch? And when you look at Oregon, when you look at their schedule, since that loss, okay, against Georgia, because we know Oregon's not going to win the national championship even if they were to sneak in. But since dropped 70 on Eastern Washington, dropped 41, won by 3 touchdowns against 12th-ranked BYU at the time, dropped 44 on Washington State, dropped 45 on Stanford, dropped 49 on Arizona, dropped 45 on an excellent UCLA secondary, and just dropped 42 on Cal. By the way, Cal, an area, a place that they have struggled mightily. Bo Nix was playing outstanding football. He's 6th in college football in QBR. He's not turned the ball over. He's distributing the ball accurately. They're converting the red zone. Oregon, despite the loss of Mario Cristobal to the University of Miami, has done a great job. You could argue this year they're better than they were last year. They are playing their best ball right now. Don't be shocked if Oregon possibly snuck their way in the playoff, but they're my 6, okay? Now as far as the playoff teams, who's number 4? I got Michigan. To me, Michigan is the number 4 team in college football, and they would be my last team to make it in the college football playoff. Here's what I'm looking at with the Michigan Wolverines. Okay, Blake Corum is in the Heisman race. He's done an unbelievable job running the football. Obviously, J.J. McCarthy is an upgrade over what they've had in recent years at the quarterback position. They've got some good playmakers to the outside. We know Michigan's defense is 2nd in college football in points per game allowed. They have been phenomenal. Jim Harbaugh once again showing he is one of the premier coaches, not just in college football. Heck, just put football as a whole. Add the NFL to that because he was a successful NFL coach. And most college coaches aren't that. To me, Michigan is number 4. Number 3, I got Georgia. Georgia, to me, is the 3rd best team in the country, not 1st or not even 2nd. Because when I look at Georgia this season, yes, they destroyed Oregon to start the season. But when I've watched Georgia this year, what's something else? The playoff has a lot of things that they look at. Strength of schedule, how you play late. They also look at margin of victory. And Georgia has struggled against immensely inferior opponents. Kent State, folks, Kent State, who today, as we speak, Kent State sits at 3-5. Georgia only led by 9 going in the 4th quarter. The defending national champion Georgia Bulldogs, a team that some consider, the best team in college football, led by a grand total of 9 points heading into the 4th quarter against Kent State. Okay, the following week, they beat Missouri by 4. It took a game-winning drive to beat Missouri. And Stetson Bennett. Everybody loves Stetson Bennett. The story, right, he's a walk-on and this and that. Stetson Bennett has not been impressive whatsoever. Okay, he's 82nd in touchdown passes in college football. Okay, when you rely on Stetson Bennett to go win you games, if you're the Georgia Bulldogs, you're in trouble. We saw that in the SEC championship game against Alabama. You say, what about the national championship? What did they do in the 4th quarter to get that lead? They got turnovers, and they ran the football down Alabama's throat. That to me, and that's why I'm favoring Tennessee, my Vols, to beat Georgia. Tennessee has all kinds of different ways to beat you on both sides of the ball, by the way. They can get pressure on you. They can make you turn the ball over. And offensively, we know what Hendon Hooker and everybody else represents. So when I look at Georgia, they have one specific way to win. Basically, get the ball to Brock Bowers and stop it defensively. The thing, though, for Georgia is, though, strength of schedule is not good. Margin of victory is not good. But their defense, per usual, is fantastic. Number one in college football in points per game allowed. Only 10 points per game allowed by Georgia, although it's safe to say I think my Vols are going to score more than 10 on Saturday. Number two, I got the Ohio State Buckeyes. I know a lot of people are kind of low on Ohio State after barely surviving the Penn State Nittany Lions. But when you look at that fourth quarter performance by C.J. Stroud, by that defense, phenomenal. Okay, C.J. Stroud to me is the best overall quarterback prospect. He has all the strengths of Will Levis, Bryce Young, and Hendon Hooker combined, along with the leadership. Now, the only thing that would hold me back on C.J. Stroud is the fact that he's an Ohio State quarterback, and Ohio State quarterbacks usually don't translate to the NFL. But going back to margin of victory, you look at Ohio State. I talk about Georgia kind of playing with their food a little bit against the likes of Missouri, Kent State. Okay, Ohio State won by 32 against Arkansas State. Won by 56 against Toledo, scoring 77 points. Beat Wisconsin by 31 points. Beat Rutgers by 39 points. Beat Michigan State by 29 points. Beat Iowa by 44 points. And had a monster fourth quarter, scoring 44 against a very good Penn State Nittany Lions defense. And so when I see Ohio State, is the strength of schedule there? No, it's not. But eye test, okay, even strength of schedule and margin of victory, they to me are a better football team than Georgia. That'd be a heck of a game that I would favor Ohio State to beat the Bulldogs in, should that matchup come to pass. And what does that mean? You know exactly what that means. My University of Tennessee Volunteers are your number one team in the country, and here is why, as if it needs explaining. First of all, not one, not two, not three, not four, but 5 ranked victories this season. At Pittsburgh, home against Florida, at LSU, which, by the way, by the day is looking even better the way LSU is playing. Obviously, the game of the year thus far in college football, beating Alabama. And then against 19th ranked Kentucky, with a top 10 NFL draft prospect in Will Levis. My Vols won 44-6. Led by turnovers, especially in the red zone, moving the ball offensively as effort. It makes it look easy. It makes it look as easy as anybody I've seen in college football since the 2019 LSU Tigers, led by Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and company. Hendon Hooker, today in Vegas, is the Heisman favorite. I've been saying he's the Heisman favorite for 2 weeks now. Jalen Hyatt, right now, is the best receiver in college football, along to me with Marvin Harrison Jr. of Ohio State. What a receiver that matchup would be should they face in the national championship game. And margin of victory. Again, LSU, folks, is playing tremendous football right now. Tremendous football. LSU's going into this Saturday's game against Alabama ranked 15th. My Vols went into Baton Rouge and beat them by 27 points. Dropped 40 on them, on a defense in LSU that has been playing lights out as of late. So when I look at Tennessee, scoring, and now their defense is getting better. We knew they could get pressure on the quarterback, but now the secondary is improving. The Tennessee Volunteers, to me, unquestionably, unequivocally, undoubtedly, are the best team in college football. And if the committee gets it right, will be represented as such in the playoff. So there you go. One last look at it. That is my rankings for the college football playoff. What I think that they should be. Listen, no Clemson fans are going to be mad at me. Folks, has Clemson passed the eye test? Have they passed the test in terms of strength of schedule? Have they looked good in, against inferior opponents? Not really. Quarterback play has been off. I mean, I'm sorry. I cannot say I'm impressed whatsoever with what I've seen from the Clemson Tigers. Let's see. My man, Philip Chenault, is in the comments. What's up, Philip? He said, I think if Clemson wins the ACC championship, they should be in it because Ohio State or Michigan is going to have at least one loss because they play each other. I understand that, Philip, and I think it's unprecedented. I don't think, because the playoffs started in 2014. I don't think an undefeated team has ever not gotten in. Was TCU undefeated in 2014? Maybe. And by the way, you can make an argument for TCU. If TCU goes undefeated and wins the Pac-12, that to me is way more impressive than Clemson winning the ACC, which I think we all agree is the worst Power 5 conference. Okay, to me, it's SEC, Big Ten. Shockingly, Pac-12 is third. They got USC and Utah and Oregon and UCLA. Pac-12 is very good. It's a shame for that conference that they're going to lose UCLA and USC to the Big Ten soon. But I get being undefeated, Philip, but again, struggling against Syracuse at home. Syracuse is a good football team, but they just lost the other day. I mean, you're telling me, like, to me, and this is why sometimes the committee overthinks it. Who's the best team? Who's the best 4 teams? Is Clemson better than Tennessee? No. Ohio State, even with one loss, Ohio State or Michigan, or Tennessee or Georgia, or Alabama, or Oregon with one loss. You look at let's just say for the sake of argument, before I get to my Bengals Browns prediction to end the show. Tennessee loses to Georgia on a walk-off field goal. Just stay with that. Tennessee loses to Georgia on a walk-off field goal. Okay? They missed the SEC championship game. So it's going to be Georgia, Alabama. If, let's say Georgia wins, so that knocks Alabama out. So that Bama's got 2 losses, they're out of it. You're telling me that Tennessee's sitting there at 11-1 with the strength of schedule that they have, their only loss being to the best team in the country on the road. Now, if Tennessee gets boat race, that's a different story. But let's say they lose by 10 or less. You're keeping them out? After what they looked like against Kentucky? After beating Alabama? After what they did against LSU on the road? It's going to be hard to keep them out. My man Mike Guido, shout out to Mike Guido. He says, tough to keep Clemson out if they go undefeated. I think only one Big Ten team gets in, 2 SEC and Clemson. Okay, so that would be. So, Mike, who do you think the 2 SEC teams are? Because it'll be the SEC East champion, whether that be Georgia or Tennessee. One of those teams are guaranteed they will get in the playoff. It'll be Georgia or Tennessee. They'll get in regardless of the outcome of the SEC championship game. Because one of those 2 teams will be undefeated. We assume. If Alabama wins, then Bama gets in. If Alabama loses, okay, so Guido's got his top 4. Tennessee, Ohio State, Georgia, Clemson as of right now. And by the way, Philip has Georgia, Ohio State swapped. He's got Georgia 2, Ohio State 3. Guido has Ohio State 2, Georgia 3. I mean, you can make an argument to switch both. I would take Ohio State over Georgia today, but if you want to make the argument just because, A, Georgia's the national champions after all, B, they play in the tougher conference, and C, their defense has been just incredible, albeit the opponents they face, but we can't totally discount that through the first part of the season. I don't know. I mean, it really all comes down to what Alabama does, because Bama does have 1 loss. Because let's say this, last scenario, I'll get to Bengals Browns. SEC East champion, forget who it is. Let's say it's Tennessee, because I think it's going to be Tennessee. Tennessee beats Georgia. Georgia misses the championship game. They have 1 loss. They face Alabama. Alabama loses. Then what happens? Tennessee obviously gets in. Big Ten champion, be it Ohio State, Michigan, they get in. Then you have to make a decision. Okay. It's so interesting. I guess at that point, you have to let Clemson in because they're undefeated. Then you're making a decision. 2-loss Alabama, 1 loss either Michigan or Ohio State. Let's say it's Michigan. 1 loss Michigan or 1 loss Georgia. It probably ends up being Georgia because Bama has 2 losses. That brings them out. Georgia plays of a tougher conference. Their only loss would be to Tennessee, the best team in the country, so they get in. It's going to be this is going to be one of the tighter playoff finishes I think we've seen since the playoff was instituted. And this, folks, is why they, in part for other reasons that I detailed this summer, but this is why the playoff is going to be 12 teams by around 2026. Guido says it's tough because I'd say 6 teams are at least worthy. And Guido says Alabama will not get in with 2 losses. I agree with that, Mike. He said Alabama would have to run the table, and that might not get them in. No, that'll get them in. If Alabama runs the table, they'll get in, because their one loss would be at Tennessee, and they will have beaten Tennessee or Georgia in the championship game. There's no way Alabama is going to run the table and not get in. But that's the interesting part. If Alabama does run the table, then it becomes interesting. So a lot of different scenarios we can go through. But put it up one more time. That's my top 6. So my top 4 in the playoff, and then the first 2 out. To me, it's Alabama, Oregon, because what I've seen from Oregon, they've been awesome through the last 6-7 games. Bo Nix has played great football. All right, last segment of the day. I have had a great week in week 8 of the NFL season. I'm 12-2, folks. Only losses being thanks to Trevor Lawrence. Thanks, Trevor. And thanks to Christian McCaffrey doing what he did to the Rams. Only 2 games I've gotten incorrect. I've ran the table everywhere else. I'm doing what Alabama is hoping to do. So last game tonight, Halloween night. By the way, game 3 of the World Series tonight. I'll give a little quick World Series analysis later. But you got the Cincinnati Bengals and you got the Cleveland Browns, an AFC North matchup featuring 2 orange-colored teams on Halloween. Cincinnati in this game is favored at -3 on the road in Cleveland. This is a fascinating game. Number 1, fun fact heading in, Joe Burrow in his, albeit very short career, only 3 years to this point, has never beaten the Cleveland Browns. He's 0-3. By the way, in those games, hasn't played that great. The last game he played against the Browns, I believe in, I think that game is in Cincinnati. The Browns won that game, if I'm not mistaken, 41-14. Joe Burrow had like a 100-yard pick 6 by his old teammate, Denzel Ward, his old Ohio State teammate, Denzel Ward. So Joe Burrow hasn't played particularly well against what is, proven to be a solid Cleveland Browns defense over the years. Outside of the New England loss, all of Cleveland's losses have been by the skin of their teeth. Like, it feels like if you just plug in a true franchise quarterback, Cleveland could be sitting here possibly at 5-2, given the way they've run the football with Nick Chubb. Given the fact that Amari Cooper seemed to be a good fit with them. Given the fact that Myles Garrett's been great. And Denzel Ward, like I mentioned earlier, has been great. The big loss for Cincinnati, though, for what is being reported 4 to 6 weeks. Jamar Chase out with the hip injury. That's a big, big loss for the Cincinnati Bengals moving forward. The good news is, as Joe Burrow himself pointed out in a podcast recently, they've got another guy who could be a number 1 on other teams. I don't think so, but Joe Burrow made the case. T. Higgins. You got a guy in the slot in Tyler Boyd. Hayden Hurst is an excellent pass-catching tight end. You can run the football with Joe Mixon. As of late, I can't lie to you folks, that much-maligned Bengals offensive line has looked really good. They played well against some good defensive lines, against the Saints, and against teams like Baltimore. They've done a solid job protecting Joe Burrow. So, they're going to need to tonight against that great Cleveland Browns defensive line. I do not think Cincinnati's going to cover because of the fact I think Cleveland's going to get off to a good start. They're going to build a lead early with the running game. I would not be shocked if Cleveland won this game, but I think it comes down to the last minute and a half. Joe Burrow's going to lead a game-winning drive, and the Cincinnati Bengals are going to win this game 27-26 over the Cleveland Browns. I think Cincinnati wins it, goes to 5-3. They're tied with the division lead with the Baltimore Ravens. Good chance that Week 18 game between those two will decide the AFC North. Cleveland loses another heartbreaking game because that's kind of been the story of their season to this point. Give me the Bengals over the Browns, albeit I would take Browns +3. That's what I would do. It's not if I were a bet man because it's a Monday night game. That's what I would do. Mike Guido says, going back to the college football rankings, he says, your rankings are great. I'd swap Clemson and Oregon and put them in, but I get your point on them. Yeah, I mean, like I said, the finish, and it's the playoff. We've had this discussion about different playoff situations over the years. It plays itself out. I mean, I remember years back in 2019, I think, and even in 2020, although A&M had a debate to possibly get in 2020. But overall, for the most part, we've all, for the most part, agreed on who the top 4 was getting in. Maybe not necessarily the order, but we're not necessarily getting up in arms about the order, about the top 4 teams. But all in all, we mostly agree. Whoever's ranked 5th probably shouldn't get in. Will that be the case this year? Who knows? It's going to be an exciting finish. It's very exciting for me. Because as we say in Knoxville, it is great to be a Tennessee Vol. World Series Game 3 tonight, by the way. Oh, it's got postponed. Okay, World Series Game 3 just got postponed. So no World Series tonight. So Game 3 will be tomorrow. All right, interesting. That's gonna be very, very interesting. Phillies Astros. I'll give a sort of quick prediction on how I think the 3 games in Philadelphia are going to play out. I think Houston's going to take 2 of 3. I think Houston's going to take 2 of 3. You know, what was shocking about game 1 was the fact that Philadelphia's offense has often done a good job playing with the lead and then trusting their bullpen to lock it down. Absolute opposite. But Justin Verlander struggled in the World Series. We know that he's 0-6. That played itself out once again. And I think it was JT Realmuto who hit the go-ahead shot in the 10th inning that gave the Phillies the lead, which they never relinquished. But you guys know I had Astros in 7. I think Houston's going to win 2 of the next 3 in Philadelphia. Everybody's going to count the Phillies out in game 6. They will win game 6 in Houston, and the Astros will win the title in game 7. That's how I think it's going to play out. I said there'd be a split after 2 games. Here we are. Although I thought it'd be the reverse. Astros win game 1, Phillies win game 2. But that's how it played out. I'm still sticking to Kyle Tucker winning World Series MVP, especially how he played in game 1. Kyle Tucker will be your World Series MVP. All right, that is all the time we have for today's show. I appreciate everybody stopping by as always. Be sure to catch Carving It Up Live on Thursday, as always at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time on Facebook Live, at YouTube, and on Twitter. Also, be sure to like, share, comment, and as always, most importantly, hit that big red subscribe button. Helps the channel grow exponentially. And be sure to subscribe also to the Grid Network, which is where all my shows, all my clips, as well as the shows and clips of my other Grid teammates. You saw Mike Guido in the chat there. He's a part of the Grid. We got Barry Grant Jr. with the All Even Podcast. We got Patrick Brown, the Chaotic Sports Podcast. Alfred Parsar Jr. with the Rocket Fuel Podcast. And you got my man Ryan Flowers, Clutch Sports Talk Podcast. Great show, by the way, last night, Ryan. Really enjoyed it. So be sure to check that out. Subscribe there. Like, share, comment there. And subscribe to Apple Podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio, etc. Basically all podcasting platforms to the Grid Network. That is GRYD, the Grid Network, where all of my podcast shows are on, as well as everybody else's. So be sure to go check that out. We are building this grid, baby. We're feeling good. Dare to be different, man. Dare to be different. Feeling good. I'm feeling good about my picks too. Bengals going to win this game tonight. Have a great evening, everybody. Stay safe out there. It is Halloween. People tend to get crazy tonight. But have a great evening. You know, get you some candy, enjoy some candy, watch some scary movies, whatever you do on Halloween, enjoy it. We start Christmas, celebrate tomorrow in my house. That's all I'm saying. Have a great evening, everybody. Stay safe out there. God bless you all. Peace out. I gotta admit, this is the best costume, though. We dress like winners here. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube. Be sure to click that big red subscribe button and go check out the other clips and full shows of Carving It Up Live. Have a blessed day.